Hi, I'm Dustin. This video is going to show you the basics of how to program a DMPS switcher with Crestron SIMPL Windows, so you can select sources and have pop-ups and control a monitor. So here is a link to download the project files, the VTP and SIMPL Windows. Now I'm going to demonstrate what project we're building here. So in VTP, I've already created it to save time. We've got two pages, a logo page and a main page. The logo page has a press to start, very basic. And for this one, I just did a flip to page main. The main page has source selections, room PC, laptop, and Blu-ray, has volume controls. I should note that this is a gauge. It's not set as touch settable. I just want it to show. I don't want people to press on it and change the volume. I've also got a shutdown button, and this pop-up, if I right click and click visible, shows to say yes or cancel for shutdown. When you press yes, I'm actually going to change that here because I missed that part. I'm going to page flip back to the logo page. So now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to show you how to create this project in SIMPL Windows. This is the processor type we're building this solution for. It is a DMPS3-4k-350-C. Now you'll note that we have a number of HDMI inputs. We've got a couple of HD-based-T inputs, a couple of HDMI outputs, and HD-based-T outputs. It also has an internal amplifier, and I'm going to show you how you can set that up. So with the new SIMPL program here, we're going to give it system name DMPS, and program ID, I'm just going to call it AV. Processor selection, this is where we pick our DMPS. And I said it was a 3-4k-350-C, which is right here. So now I'm going to add two things to the hardware definitions. One is the touch panel. I'm going to put that under Ethernet at IPID03. Double click, and it is a TSW770. In here, it shows up as a TS770. I just press T to get down to the T's. And TS7, actually no, TSW770, that's fine. Okay, so I've got that. And then I'm also adding a receiver. Now you could incorrectly put it on here and it's not going to manage the IP ID properly. You'd have to set it up manually. This is how you want to do it with a DMPS or a DM switcher. You go to the DMPS control, go to the AV output or AV control, then the outputs, and slot DM3. Looking at this, that is DM output 3 right there. We're going to expand this and you'll see there's an empty slot. I'm going to put a DM RMC 4K-100-C. That's a non-scaling receiver, but it has serial output. So we're going to be using the serial port here. That's all we need for hardware definitions here. I'm going to go ahead and save my project. Now we'll switch over to the logic view. And I like to expand that. What I need to create is, first of all, the touch panel logic. So I'm going to type sub for a folder and colon and then TP logic. Next thing I'm going to do is define my joins from VT Pro. On the logo page, there are no button presses, so I don't have to define anything from here. On the main page, I'm going to hide the shutdown so I can see the buttons. And I've got room PC. I'm having kind of trouble seeing it, so I'm going to expand here with control and scroll button. Define these here as TP source, room PC, press, TP source, laptop, press, TP source, Blu-ray, press. That says Blu-ray. And then we've got the buttons on the bottom. Shutdown, which is 19. TP shutdown, press. And we've got the volume up and down. Up is 30. TP volume up, press. TP volume down, press. This is analog 1. So I'm going to say TP volume %. And I'll explain why I'm calling it % in a couple minutes when we look at volume ranges. There's nothing serial. The only other things that we need to define here are the pop-up and the buttons on it. So the buttons on it are 20 and 21. So TP shutdown, yes, press, and TP shutdown, cancel, press. And then the subpage shows on the main page with a join of 10. So this is going to be TP shutdown pop-up. I like to call them pop-ups, feedback. And that should define all of the joins that we care about from this project here. The main methodology that I'm using for switching in this program, and it's kind of the core of it, is I'm going to use the analog initialize and equate. So I'm going to press Alt-Y to bring up the symbol library. Under analog operations, analog initialize and analog equate. The initialize, I'm going to press Tab, give it a comment of set source. And this will be source feedback. And what it should actually be is set display one source and display one feedback. Let's look at what we're actually doing here. This DM output 3 is going to be feeding an RMC receiver that's at an LG monitor. We're not going to add anything else at this time, but in the future, because we have multiple outputs, we might have multiple displays. So let's plan for that now when we build the base of our program. So I'm going to give the analog output a name of display one source, and that is going to line up to the equate. The thing that's going to set it is pressing source PC, laptop, or Blu-ray. So I'm going to select those, put them to the initialize. Setting the values here, this is where we need to look at what the actual hardware does. Let's take a look here, because if I just set them as 1, 2, 3, our logic would work, but we're going to want to run that into the switcher, and the inputs might not actually correlate with what we want to use. So there's ways to remap analog values, but they're too complicated. I'm going to do it the simple way here. So I close the symbol library with Alt-Y. I'm going to go to DMPS control, DMPS3 control. Under AV control, if I double click that, there's a whole bunch of stuff. We want to look at video source for DM3. This is the one that we care about here. Remember I said DM3. So this is going to be that signal we just defined, which is display one source. I'm going to press F1. So if we look at analog inputs for video source, HDMI 1, HDMI 2, DM3, and DM4. So 0 equals no root, 1 equals HDMI 1. You can see how that maps out basically. So if we give it a 1, it'll pick this, 2 will pick that, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. With the older DMPSs, they had VGA as well, so it was kind of a different increment. You have to look at the help file to see what the input numbers actually mean. So let's look at what our actual sources are going to be once again. Room PC, laptop, and Blu-ray. So in this system, the room PC is local to the rack, so it's going to be HDMI 1. So when room PC is selected, we have the value of 1 to that switcher, selecting that input for that output. Now when laptop selected, laptop is actually going to come from a DM transmitter. We didn't define it because we don't really need to do anything with it in terms of control, but it's going to be input 7. So laptop will be 7, and Blu-ray is another local input to the rack. We'll have that as input 2, HDMI 2. So these presses now will actually switch the inputs on the DM switcher for output DM3. That's pretty much the root of what we need it to do, but we got to do some more stuff to make this program useful. So I'm going to copy these over to here, and instead of press, I'm going to press F9 to rename. I'm going to change it from press to feedback. And these are going to drive the buttons on the touch panel. Now the one thing we need to double check, because we want the buttons to be pressed in for the last selected source, we need to check one parameter here for all 3 of these buttons, and that is show control feedback. That needs to be checked. It's not checked by default. So this will make it depressed when the feedback of that channel, in this case 17, is high. Now there's a couple other things we need to do with our analog initialize. 1, 7, and 2, we're going to copy these across so that when the values are that, then we have the feedback showing. And this is basically it's a super interlock where you have your inputs that only one of them can be selected at a time, and you have your outputs. When the system is shut off, we need this source to actually go to 0. So I'm going to expand this here, and the shutdown yes press. I'm going to put that here, give this a 0 value. We don't need to equate to 0 because nothing is showing when the source is 0. They're all depressed. So that's all that we need for that. The next thing we need to do is a subpage or pop-up for the power shutdown. So I'm going to go sub, and that has nothing to do with the fact that it's a subpage. I'm just creating a folder in SIMPL Windows here. Shutdown pop-up. I'm going to have a set reset latch and an OR gate. Close pop-up condition. The set reset latch is set when you press the shutdown button, and the output is the feedback that holds that pop-up high. Now it can be reset by two different things. So I'm going to have TP shutdown close condition coming off an OR gate to reset it, and it can be reset by either pressing yes or pressing cancel. Either of those conditions should close that pop-up, but only one of them will actually do something. So the shutdown yes closes the pop-up, but it also sets the source to 0. Now the other thing that we need is we got to deal with volume. We'll do that in a minute, but I want to have a system folder, and I'm going to have a set reset latch for system state, and we'll have an OR gate for turn system on condition. So any of the sources that are selected will turn the system on the first time they're pressed, and then it will just stay on. We'll use that to control our monitor. It goes to our set reset latch. I'll have system state on feedback. I will also have system state off feedback. And right now, things to turn the system off, there's only one thing, is when you do the yes press, TP shutdown, yes press. So we will have that reset the system. Now let's look at the volume, and then we'll look at display control. So I'm going to create a folder here for devices. And I will create another folder here for DMPS audio. Now there's a couple of ways to handle DMPS audio. We could send it a volume level, or we could just use the built-in controls to control the up and the down. And I think we're going to look at doing it that way. So let's pin this and close the others and look here at audio, AV control, and it's under program audio. Since we're using the internal amp, we're going to use our system state here to turn the amp on and off based on the system state. And we're going to basically be controlling master volume. And this just takes presses in, so we can directly use our up and down press. Now the current level that we're going to display is going to probably be this one, but I'm going to look at the help file and make sure that it's in the range that I need it to be. So this is where it will get you a little bit. Percentage scale on a Crestron system is 0 to 65,535. And that's like representative of 0 to 100%. Now this takes in a decibel range of -80 dB to +10 dB. That's what you'll see sometimes on audio controllers and DSPs. So we need a way to scale that so that we can actually display it on the touch panel. We don't need to set it because we're just using the up-down. So this has an internal ramp in it that's doing that. But we've got DMPS, master volume, and I'll call it dB because it's in the dB decibel range. Now in here, I need to add an analog scaler. There's a number of scalers. I'm going to use analog scaler with IO limits. It's the easiest one to use. Basically, I run an input there. The output is going to be the analog on my touch panel. And the input lower level, look at this help file again. It's going to be minus 800. I'm just going to double check that. Minus 800 to 100. So minus 800 to 100. And the output lower limit is going to be 0% to 100%. Format, if you look at the help file for this scaler, if the input is a negative number, then format has to be 1. That means it takes a signed input. And if it's not a negative number, it can be 0. So I'm going to have to set that to 1. The decibel scale is logarithmic, meaning that it's like a tapered curve. So from minus 80 dB to like minus 40 dB, that's like a good percentage of the actual scale, but there's not much volume adjustment that you're hearing there. So what I'm actually going to do is change this so that it goes from minus 400 to 100. That doesn't really change how it performs, but it'll make it so it's easier to see level changes in the range that we care about. And the last thing I'm going to do is get the display control working. So let's add another subfolder for display. I'll say display 1. And I'm going to add a serial I/O, which is SIO. Give it the name LG monitor. I'm going to use my TLDR clipboard utility, and I'll link to the video where you can actually download that and show you how it works. I need power on. I need power off. And let's just see if there's an input. There's not an input in this command set, so we'll just do power on and power off at this point. I'm going to send these as parameter multi. Now, you don't have to do this way. You could copy them individually. It doesn't really make sense to do it for a couple of them, but if you have a long list, it might be handy. So I can go to my serial I/O. I have to expand it here because I'm adding 2 inputs, and I can paste with Control V. The delimiter is \R. And then we need to find where we're sending these to. And that is under DMPS control, AV control, outputs, DM3, that receiver that we added, and the serial port. So this is going to be display 1 TX $, and we might as well run the RX as well to the serial I/O, even though we're not parsing any strings from it. Now right click, go find node, just so we don't have to find it here. Press F6 and serial settings 9600 N8 and 1. That should be indicated here. This particular one does not tell you, but that's a pretty common default, 9600 N8 and 1. So we're going to use that. Now we haven't defined any signals to drive these, and we can actually just use the on and off feedback, but I'm going to add a multiple one-shot, so it just pulses, and give it a pulse time of 0.1 seconds. These latched signals that are held high are going to go on this side. On this side, I'll just rename the feedback _feedback to _pulse. And then I could put those here. So we've got monitor serial control there. So now I'm going to compile that and we'll see how it works. So I've already installed XPanel on this laptop, so I can just do this drop down here and go run as, and put my processor. This is just a local DNS. That will compile it and run it as an XPanel. So there's our logo. Press to start. And we choose one of the sources, and it will latch on. Shutdown does the pop-up. We can cancel it, and that source is still selected. Or go yes, the source is closed, it kicks us back here. Now, because I'm not actually loading this on a DMPS, the actual volume control is not going to work. I've loaded this onto my MC4. But if it was a real DMPS, that would work right. So again, here's a link to the source code for this VTP project and also the SIMPL Windows file. And if you like this video, please like it here on YouTube and subscribe to the channel for notification of when we release new videos. Now this TLDR clipboard utility that I showed you here, it's pretty handy, especially if you have long lists of stuff. I'll link to the video here that describes it so that you can check it out. Thanks and have a great day.